Good evening. Good evening. This is Jane Hoffman, and I run a podcast called Political Gravity. Sometimes we have it on air on YouTube Live when BTR is not working. So I do have two co-hosts calling in the next few minutes. But before I do that, I'm going to explain something. Cardinal Richelieu was the Bishop of Lausanne in France. He was also a minister of war during the 30 Years' War, and he tried to help stabilize the fighting between the Catholics and the Lutherans and the other Protestants. Many of the Huguenots were murdered in France in an uprising, and Cardinal Richelieu, even though he was Catholic, he was concerned about the success of France. And sometimes he would funnel money into the Protestant movements like the Dutch to fight off the Spanish and help control the Habsburg Empire that had powerful duchies all over Europe. I am going to play a short clip before my co-hosts call in. And the problem is that before the nation state was firmly developed, there were countries fighting for territorial power. There was Gustavus Adolphus in Sweden, who actually fought right during the 30 Years' War as a king, and he ended up dying in battle. And he became a longtime national and international hero. There were other countries and estates fighting, including the nobility, fighting for power in the area. And the Holy Roman Empire was scattered throughout Europe. It had strongholds in what is now Germany, Spain, and the way that they help control that is through intermarriage. So I'm just going to play a short clip, and you're going to learn about it while I'm waiting for my co-hosts.
Few rivals. They dominated Austria uninterruptedly from the end of the 13th century until the beginning of the 20th. In fact, among the various regions that formed the Austrian Empire, the Habsburg dynasty was the reigning one. The Habsburgs always settled their power in the family, a collection of dynastic heritages, without a common denominator, ethnic or territorial. This is how the monarchy achieved its most authentic supremacy. Much of what is said about the origin of the Habsburgs is doubtful, mixing legends and acts of heroism. It is said that, around the year 950, after a hunt, Guntram, a rich nobleman from the Alsace region, now France, lost his great hunting hawk. After a long time of searching, he found it on a strategically located rock. His descendants built, in that place, 70 years later, a castle called Hawk Castle, Habsburg, a name that was eventually adopted by the family. The castle became the family's headquarters, while the family established its position as one of the region's most influential. In the beginning, they were not the most important family. But from Werner, first count of the family on, the Habsburgs gained more importance and power. In the 13th century, they reached stardom. The family's aggrandizement came at a favorable time, as the Holy Roman Empire was in a serious crisis. After the death of the last emperor, Frederick II, in 1250, an era of great hostilities began among the main nobles of the empire. Small wars broke out all over Central Europe. And 23 years later, after the papal intervention against the election of a very strong new king, the voters rejected the idea of choosing the King of France or the King of Bohemia.
So now I'm going to read to you, I'm hoping that, just a minute. I'm going to have to read to you off of my Google Drive on my phone because the last time I read it, it didn't go through. So I wrote an article about Michael Flynn and his association with the United States military and how he converted to radical Christianity after he was done serving as a general in Iraq and Afghanistan, and how his personal choice in religious conflict was creating a problem, because what happened was, just a minute, I got to get to the right drive. Just a moment. The problem with Michael Flynn is that he took his efforts as a religious right person and tried to stop the going forward of Joseph Biden as the president of the United States. In fact, he was trying to create a military coup in alliance with the January 6th resistance. And this is a dangerous waters, because it's similar to Cardinal Richelieu trying to manage the Lutherans and the Catholics during his time as a cardinal and a bishop. And I'm going to read you this article so you can make parallels. Michael Flynn has taken the authority of a once effective U.S. military 3-star general and turned it into an attempt of a patriotic coup laced with Christian nationalism. He was not opposed to a January takeover by force of the 2020 election and was involved in counties such as Antrim, Michigan, into private counts of revoting and recounting votes in places that he thought there was wrongdoing. Military peers of the PS Frontline documentary who knew Mike Flynn and worked with him in those foreign countries said that he was disenfranchised with the military losses in Afghanistan and the struggle in Iraq. Although he was promoted to the Director of Intelligence for a Joint Special Operations Command from 2004 to 2007 in both Iraq and in Afghanistan, witnesses observed what he considered both wars overseas a failure. After multiple tactical missions in Iraq to weed out terrorists amongst the Iraqi civilian population, the overall arc of his missions created more American distrust by Iraqi civilians. Then he concluded the U.S. government had failed in their mission against radical Islam. Flynn returned to the U.S. with his own mission to divide Americans from passive Christians into his own philosophical, patriotic claim that there is a new war in America and only the religious right and the people who stand by him and Trump are worthy. By the way, I wrote this article for the Duluth News Tribune, but they want me to water it down and to blend it more into an election 2024 style article. So he takes this mantra and he steps on stage and he starts hammering down the patriotism and the good citizens of America versus the deranged left. He conflagrates monetary economic policy to the threat of Marxism and communism, which is inaccurate, and I'll tell you why in a minute, and seeks out enemies who defy the grain of his puritanical roots. Flynn was a Democrat up until 2021, even after Trump was elected. He did help lead the January 6th insurgency and psychologically attempted to divide American voters into Christian sheep versus hedonistic goats, also vilifying Michael Pence, our vice president at the time. This preaching style of patriotism can lead to dangerous waters. Flynn was dismounted as the National Security Advisor in 2017 for his ties to a Russian ambassador named Sergei Kislyak and fortified payments that he received up to $45,000 for one speech he made in front of the Russian defense military. This is what he got while he was still serving as an active military. Or he might have been on furlough with Obama, I'm not sure. Don McGahn, pending White House counsel that was handling the Trump transition, said that was told by Michael Flynn himself that he was under federal investigation for secret lobbying work he had done for Turkey during the campaign. He had told Susan Rice, the former national security advisor under Obama, not to back the Kurds over Turkey on a secret mission that was planned. In other words, he was coalescing with the Turkish government while not being an official military general. In historical contrast, Cardinal Richelieu, who was the Catholic Bishop of Lausanne during the 30 Years' War, which was 30 years right smack in the middle of the 17th century. It was like 1630 to 1660, somewhere in that range. He secretly financed against the Habsburg Empire because it was too powerful and the Holy Roman Empire, even though he was a Catholic bishop. He specifically supported the Dutch to fight off the Spanish in 1624 and helped Gustavus Adolphus, the Protestant king of Sweden, claim his country's influence over dominating Catholics. Richelieu was instrumental in redirecting the 30 Years' War from the conflict of Protestantism versus Catholicism to that of the nationalism versus the Habsburg hegemony, which was diced around all of Europe. And they also intermarried to strengthen their regime. He was the first major religious figure in history, Cardinal Richelieu, to promote a secular government with civilian rights versus a continual religious conflict on who has the spiritual right to rule. In other words, instead of each side claiming that they're the God-provided, God-given ruler, he wanted human rule and the religious aspect in the backdrop. He was antagonized by the Huguenot massacre in France. He was the father of the nation state, which gives the country's borders and diffuse religious duchies, minimizing the religious conflict. In election 2024, we see many religious and social media influencers promoting their strongholds within the two-party system. But we rarely see an ex-military general using religion as the main tool to divide the nation. And by the way, Flynn hardly ever talks about issues except for vilifying liberals. A newfound mission in which Flynn intends to create more division by his speech into a framework of who in the United States is worthy to be defended by our government and who is valued as citizens. So right now I'm going to call Don and I'm going to interlope him into this discussion. It's his birthday today. And I'm going to see if he's ready to participate because he's going into the mountains of Reno for some me time. Well, it's his birthday and he just turned 68, so I don't know what's cracking. Anyways, I'm going to play one more video about Cardinal Richelieu himself, and John should be calling in less than 5 minutes. So back then, back before civil rights were exchanged in for the purpose of some protection by like the government, there wasn't a lot of protection of common citizens. If there was a dominant religious class, they would often subjugate or murder people if they didn't agree with them. So I'm just going to play a little clip here, and it's 6 minutes.
Can you keep up?
Wait, pause a minute while I... Okay, here.
Cardinal Duc de Richelieu was born as Armand Jean du Plessis into the noble du Plessis family to François du Plessis and to Suzanne de...
Can you talk now for the show? Okay, you can just be, John's calling in 5 minutes, so I'll just give you a backdrop of what the show is about, and then we will go from there, okay? Okay. Are you still packing?
We're done right now. We're just getting in the car, saying bye to the family, and getting ready to just take off to Tahoe and see what's going on out there.
Is it just you two? You and Pat?
Do we get Bluetooth?
No, is it just you and Pat going?
Yeah, we don't have Zumba tomorrow, so we kind of have a day off, and we're going to just chill out, go out and see everything that we haven't had it.
It's because it's Juneteenth tomorrow.
Juneteenth is the official celebration tomorrow. We had ours Sunday.
Yeah, I know. I saw it on her wall.
Yeah, so we had it Sunday, and we were very active, running around in the sun. So we got a lot of notoriety. So we figure we deserve a break.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but one of the things is that we basically have a couple of days because we canceled our Zumba class, so we don't have to come back essentially until Thursday morning. We have an event that we take care of with the Job Corps.
Are you sleeping in a tent?
That's a good possibility. I hadn't even thought about that because we have a million tents. So that's...
Well, you better figure it out.
Well, we don't have to figure it out because more than likely we're just going to stay in a hotel this time. Make it easy on ourselves. But maybe the next one, because, we have a camp share. So we do some resort camping.
Okay, well, let me just get into the topic quick. If you think that you're going to be noisy, put yourself on mute for the next 2 minutes.
Bye-bye. Yep, I sure will. Hold on, Jane. Hold
Okay.
on.
So as I was saying, Cardinal Richelieu, he worked his way up into kind of like, not the aristocracy of France, but he had a lot of responsibility in his own area, which was Lucon. And he also became the Minister of War because he got promoted based on his good leadership.
Oh.
So I'm talking about Cardinal Richelieu in France.
Okay.
During the 30 Years' War, the reason...
You're talking about Cardinal Richelieu.
Richelieu.
Well, go ahead.
Well, anyways, I wrote an article for the paper on Michael Flynn and how a retired military general who was Democrat up till 2021 has now attempted to overthrow the government once with election 2020, and now he's it's echoing, John, so mute yourself.
What's happening?
You're echoing.
I shouldn't be. Okay, hold on. Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to say is that during the 30 Years' War, Cardinal Richelieu tried to subdue the Catholics and Lutherans and other Protestants so they would stop killing each other. And he also funneled in money to the Dutch to stop fighting the Spanish Habsburgs, even though they were Catholic, because he wanted to form countries that were nation states with official boundaries instead of the religious douches continually fighting each other. And now I was comparing that to Michael Flynn, who came home from battle. He felt defeated in the war against Iraq and Afghanistan. So PBS Frontline said he started a war against half of America for not believing in his version of religion, which is anti-abortion, how to be patriotic, and his version of what he thinks is a good citizen. Either way, it's dividing our country, people like him. And I was trying to compare how one religious person promoted a secular state and another one's trying to recreate a religious state. Do you have any comments on that?
I like to have things that are applicable to now. Michael Flynn is publishing a book, and so he's just garnering publicity, talking about bullshit, and
Have you followed him in the news?
No, of course not. Nobody follows Michael Flynn.
Well, he's a celebrity amongst the Trumpsters.
I understand.
He's one of the top speakers.
Well, the thing is that he's old and tired in terms of what he's done. He's kind of like who's the boy who just testified against Trump? Michael Cohen.
Oh, Cohen? Michael Cohen?
This is all old news. This is something that the Republicans are pushing hard because they're trying to deflect from their abortion views. And that's the only thing that's keeping them from a potential mandate. And so we're going to have to, push Michael Flynn to the side because he's been indicted for lying too. So he's
Trump during Trump's office, he pardoned Michael Flynn for his felony.
Right, he was contempt of court, and so he's another felon. If you put all of Trump's felons on a paper, on a root paper, that would be the largest genealogy map you can find.
Another thing he got in trouble for is with the FBI for stretching the truth and lying. And it happened. He gave a speech to the Russian defense for $45,000. And then once he got put in as Trump's national security advisor, the FBI did more investigation, and he did some dark relations with Turkey, in which he told Susan Rice her and Obama were planning a coup against the Turks that were trying to attack the Kurds. And he told Susan Rice that don't be nice to the Turkish people. Don't do your private secret enterprise with the Kurds, because he didn't confess, but he confessed to the White House counsel, another guy, Don McCann, that he was coalescing with the Turks while he was not in military in a title rank. So I'm not saying he is relevant, but PBS Frontline did a special on him and how he's upped his game with all this nonsense about how there's only certain Christian people that are worthy to be served by the government, and everybody else is like hedonistic. And if Trump wins, it could be trouble for us.
No, there's going to be. He's already told about retribution, so there's no problem there. That's the point. You have to be ready for that contingency, Plan B. And that was one of the things I was going to tell you about. What you were thinking. You got to have a Plan B because there's going to be contention. There's going to be a contentious race, and everybody's going to have to wait about to the final second because I think it's going to be that close.
Yeah, and then I've been following a guy on a lighter note. I've been following a guy named Harry Sisson, Sisson. He's a 21-year-old student from NYU, and he has an excellent Instagram podcast, like about 5 minutes a day. He's totally supporting Biden. He totally defends Biden and his policies. And his contrast is that he's young and age is not a factor for him. But the point is that he's kind of a positive light for the youth because he's knowledgeable and he's just ignoring all the bull crap, the fake news stuff with Trump and just getting to the point on each of his podcasts.
He's a podcaster, and what does he do?
He's a pro-Democrat, and he's trying to point out that even though both Trump and Biden are old now, that he still thinks Joe Biden has command over essential policies that either make or break our country.
Okay. You said he was young.
He's only 21 years old.
Yeah, right. Whatever. So.
Well, you know what? He's on TikTok and Instagram, and you can make a lot of money doing that, even if you're not like a campaign manager of a party.
Right. No, you can make a lot of money, period.
He's not inflammatory. He only sticks with the facts, and he's also kind of funny.
And he doesn't have any aspirations to go anywhere else than what he's doing as a podcaster.
Right. He has 1 or 2 more years of college. He's developing a following, and depending on who wins the election will determine his future popularity.
Okay. We'll figure him out later on. I don't know if he...
I'm just bringing up in a light subject like other things I've seen in the news.
Okay.
So do you want to stay on the air 5 more minutes, or should I interlope and call John now?
Call John now to make sure that he's going to be on there because for the most part I'll be around, so I'll call right back.
Yeah, well, do not hang up right now, okay? I'm adding John to the call, okay? Just a minute. You can put yourself on mute while I do this, okay? Don't hang up, Don. Okay, Don, can you hear me? Don, can you call back in 5 minutes?
I'm not calling
I mean, you can stay on the line, but I'm trying to figure out. I wanted to add John, and he's not ready. He didn't pick up.
Okay.
So.
Right, well, I'll give you. Okay, go ahead. I was gonna say I'll give you a call back unless there's a possibility of technical difficulties, and then I'll just stay on.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hang up on you. If you can call back in 5 or 10 minutes, that way I can get a. Please do that, okay?
All right, sweetie. No problem.
Okay. So the reason why I hung up on Don is because it's his birthday and he's going into the mountains. And I wanted to play one more video on Cardinal Richelieu. So my co-host, John, call in 5 minutes, John. I'm going to play this YouTube video, please. But this lady has really bad French accent, so I hope you can hear it.
De la Porte. His father, François du Plessis, Seigneur de Richelieu, was given command of the Maréchaussée, a precursor of the police by Henry III of France in 1578. The Maréchaussée was charged with maintaining order and justice regarding serious crimes at court and throughout the kingdom. As a result, in 1588, after the murder of the Duke Henri I de Guise, it was du Plessis' duty to burn the body of the Duke at the stake and to scatter his ashes in the Loire. He became captain in the Royal Guard of Henri IV, but he died when the later cardinal was only 5 years old. From the age of 9, Richelieu was educated at the Collège de Navarre. Later on, he underwent military training as an officer. His brother Alphonse was the intended bishop of Luçon, which was the Plessis family's profitable permanent seat. But Alphonse became a Carthusian and, as a monk, could not become a bishop. Therefore, Armand had to prepare himself for an ecclesiastical career and went to study at the Collège de Lisieux, where he became a candidate in theology. Because he had always been...
I'm just pausing a minute that he had a military background when he was younger, and he was involved with law and order in the state, but later on, he went into a theology degree because of certain conditions.
Relatively weak and sickly, and because he liked to study, he did not mind exchanging his military career for a clerical one. At the age of 21, Richelieu was appointed Bishop of Luçon. He was appointed Cardinal in 1622 and remained in Luçon until 1624. In 1614, he became a representative at the États Généraux and managed to gain the favor of the Dowager Queen and Regent of France, Maria de Medici, who appointed him Secretary of State and gave him the responsibility for foreign affairs in
Maria de Medici was a major central figure in the 1600s, and as she stated, he became the Secretary of War for the state.
1616. When the young King Louis XIII seized power in 1617, Richelieu was relieved from his position and removed from court. However, Richelieu managed to restore the relationship between the king and his mother in 1620, which earned him the recognition throughout the country, and ever since that moment, his influence at court started to grow. Richelieu was appointed to the Royal Council of Ministers in 1624. On August 13 of that same year, he became the king's prime minister and was appointed president of the Royal Council in 1629. In his Testament politique, which was first published after Richelieu's death in 1688, he summarized his goals for France: to destroy the Huguenot party.
He became a prime minister for the state of France, and he also wrote a book on politics. And they're talking about his relationship now with the Huguenots.
To bring down the pride of the nobility, to restore all subjects to their duties, and to raise the king's name abroad to the level where it belongs. Richelieu was driven by his Catholic faith and saw himself entirely as an instrument of God who had to establish peace and order in Europe. In the field of foreign relations, Richelieu managed to persuade the king to resume the anti-Habsburg policies of his father Henri IV. This political move was a purely rational one, determined by the interests of the state. France had been under siege from the German and Spanish Habsburgs for over a century. The fact that the Habsburgs had always been defenders of the Catholic faith was no interest to Richelieu. He forged alliances with Charles I of England and with other Protestant states, such as the Republic of the Seven United Provinces, Denmark, and Sweden. He was also pragmatic in his domestic relations. If he fought the Huguenots, it was only because they threatened to form a state within the state, a danger he wanted to eliminate. When the Huguenots rebelled, Richelieu...
So he formed, he funneled money to Gustavus Adolphus in Sweden. He gave money to the Dutch so they could fight the Spanish Habsburgs. And the Spanish and German Habsburg family was very strong back then. The Huguenots were like a religious cult-like group in France, very serious, with a lot of deprivation techniques, like only wearing certain clothes. And he wanted to eliminate them because they were getting too radical. Not necessarily kill them, but just to not let them rise above the king's power.
He abandoned his relatively tolerant politics towards them and personally led the siege of La Rochelle, after which he drastically reduced the political privileges of the Protestants, which had been granted to them by the Edict of Nantes in 1598. Meanwhile, Richelieu also had to deal with the conspiracy of, among others, the Dowager Queen, Henri de Condé, the king's brother Gaston d'Orléans, and their followers. When the conspiracy was revealed, Maria de' Medici was forced into exile, but Gaston d'Orléans continued his scheming against Richelieu. However, Richelieu had highly sophisticated intelligence and security services and a private militia of bodyguards at his disposal, and kept a close eye on the Duke from there on out. The 30 Years' War, which had been raging since 1618, which placed the Habsburg...
So Maria de' Medici had to be exiled from the country, and the Duke was plotting against him. Now we're getting into the territory that I'm an expert at. The 30 Years' War was between 1618 and 1648, and that's when Cardinal Richelieu played a very significant role in distributing military force in Europe and subduing religious groups that were too powerful.
Against France had varying success for the French military. In 1635, open war broke out with Spain. In 1636, also with the German emperor. As the military campaigns placed a heavy burden on the royal coffers, Richelieu created new taxes, which were mostly paid by the Third Estate, the poorest segment of the population. The new taxes were not well received, and several revolts broke out between 1636 and 1639, which were violently put down and plummeted the cardinal's popularity in the final years of his life. In 1642, the cardinal felt his health deteriorating rapidly. He sensed the end approaching and persuaded the king to appoint one of his most trusted followers, Cardinal Jules Mazarin, as his follower. Although Mazarin was originally a representative of the Vatican, he stepped out of the papal ministry.
So I'm going to stop there. John is super late for the show. We've already been going 38 minutes, so I might start a new YouTube live if he calls in. But this segment was mainly about my comparison of Cardinal Richelieu, who I considered a great religious leader, who tried to serve the overall bride-based purpose of the government and helped created the border, nation states that had closed borders that could promote civil law and order among people, and religious belief was still a major right, but not used to persecute others in the sense that they thought they were the divine rulers and the other group was not. So I want to warn people that in our country, the United States, that Donald Trump and his minions are now and have been using religion as a weapon. They're trying to use a shame-based technique of making poor people and people who have abortions and also gay people, which I'm actually a Baptist, so, but still they have civic rights. But the thing is that you cannot divide a nation by their moral code. We all are citizens with equal rights to express ourselves, and we each get one vote. And we have to be careful on what kind of religious tactics are seeping into the Republican Party, and also be a little cautious on liberal techniques too, on what their agenda is for left-wing policies. With that, I'm going to end the show, and my lesson next week will be on something else. Thank you for listening.